Are there any lessons that you learned from back in the cloud days that gave you some sort of unfair advantage of all the founders who never went through that period? Or is it so new that nothing really applied?
I sent a Slack message to my CTO shortly after ChatGPT was released and said, this is changing everything and we need to be thinking about our product in a profoundly different way. Approximately 77% of people that have legal issues do not have those legal issues resolved by a lawyer. What we saw take a decade with cloud in terms of adoption is happening in a year in AI terms. The last year has definitely been the busiest year in my 17 years at Clio. Things seem to just keep getting more intense and faster paced. AI is not going to replace lawyers, but lawyers leveraging AI are going to replace those that are not.
All right, before we dive in, you're listening to the Executive Brand Podcast with me, your host, Thormeier. Each week, I sit down with top B2B CEOs, executive, and founders to break down their playbooks. If you've not yet, it would really help if you subscribe or follow the show because it helps us get on better guests and create better content for you guys. All right, let's dive in. All right, I'm here with Jack Newton, the founder and CEO at Clio. Clio is the #1 legal software. He started the company in 2008 in Canada. They have over 400,000 customers. They raised the 500 million Series G in 2025. They're doing over 400 million in ARR, 2,000 employees. He is also the best-selling author of the book, The Client-Centered Law Firm, and EY Entrepreneur of the Year. And I want to dive in all things SaaS growth. You guys have been doing some acquisitions. You're going up market, Clio Enterprise. I think there's lots of lessons in there. So, Jack, thank you for joining the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Finn. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Before the show, I talked to Jenny Strickland from ShareDo, and she told me that one of the things that gets you really excited is the topic of access to law. Why is that?
Well, when I founded Clio in 2008 with my co-founder, Ryan Govro, what we were really struck by was it felt like law was the last major industry to be fundamentally transformed by technology. In 2008, it felt like a law firm was still operating much the way it might have in 1978. There are a lot of paper files, a lot of pen and paper, and just a very antiquated way of working. And even the law firms that were using technology were using tools like Excel and Outlook to kind of weave together an ad hoc practice management system. And so what we saw was a real opportunity to bring the power of the cloud to legal. And in doing so, we felt like there was a real opportunity to make lawyers more productive and more efficient through technology. And in doing so, we would actually unlock better access to lawyers. And we really feel like technology can play a huge role in reducing the friction associated with consumers accessing lawyers. We also, as we dug into the problem, realized just how enormous this problem is. Approximately 77% of people that have legal issues do not have those legal issues resolved by a lawyer. So there's this huge access to justice crisis where, again, there's so much friction, there's such high cost, there's so much inefficiency in how lawyers work and how they connect with the consumers. We felt like there was a real opportunity to bring technology to bear on that problem to dramatically reduce the friction associated with accessing legal services, to leverage the cloud and now AI to dramatically reduce the cost of delivering legal services and to really, at the end of the day, revolutionize how legal services are delivered and drive what we think could be a real win-win-win. And that is enabling lawyers to deliver legal services more affordably, but at the same time more profitably for their law firm, to make legal services a better experience for clients, a lower friction experience at a lower cost basis. We think there's an opportunity for lawyers to delight their clients by leveraging technology appropriately. So we feel like there's a real opportunity to improve the client experience in legal. And then finally, we've the two wins thus far, making life better for lawyers and making life better for clients. We think there's another really exciting opportunity to drive access to justice. And by reducing the cost of accessing legal services, we feel like there's a real opportunity to drive that efficiency.
Now, people make that analogy with the changes that are happening with AI to the changes that happened when everything went on the cloud. I read that back in 2008, one of the big risks with Clio was the question, will lawyers ever trust the cloud? Which sounds obviously insane to me. In 2026, is the question of will lawyers and large law firms ever trust AI, is the answer more obvious, or is it just as risky?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. If you rewind the clock to 2008, I agree with you. It's hard to imagine this being the case, but it really was. Lawyers were legitimately concerned about storing their data in the cloud, and I remember the reaction we had when we launched Clio was lawyers telling us we're encouraging professional malpractice, basically. Like storing your data in the cloud is unethical. That we're basically, we were being told we were out to lunch, that we shouldn't be allowing lawyers to store their data in the cloud. But we had a very strong point of view on this, which is the cloud is a far safer and more secure delivery model for technology to lawyers than the on-premise model. And I think the last 17 years have really helped prove that out and bring it to bear. But again, just to set the context, in 2008, the iPhone, the first iPhone, was just released the year before. Dropbox was actually released in 2008. So the cloud was a very nascent, emerging technology at that point. And I think we had early conviction this was the computing model of the future, and that obviously came to be the case. Now, to your question around AI, I think what is different is the cloud felt like a technology that was almost being sold to lawyers. Like you had to kind of pitch lawyers on the cloud and what the value of the cloud is, and you'd see a light bulb go off, and then they'd embrace it in their law office. What I see as being really profoundly different with AI is to the degree to which lawyers are pulling this technology proactively into their law offices. I think lawyers instinctively realize understanding and leveraging AI is existential to them, and that they need to be figuring out how to get ahead of the curve on this technology. So my very strong point of view on AI is that AI is not going to replace lawyers, but lawyers leveraging AI are going to replace those that are not. And so what we're seeing is a huge amount of urgency on the part of lawyers of pulling AI into their law firms and really trying to figure out, how do I embed this in my day-to-day workflows? How do I best leverage this incredible new innovative technology in my law firm and really unlock its capability? And there are a bunch of important ethical considerations with AI. There's a lot of parallels, I think, between adopting AI and adopting cloud technology 17 years ago. But the really significant difference is, I think, the mental model that lawyers use when they're leveraging AI and they're leveraging LLMs needs to be quite a bit different than what it's been with some of the technologies they've used historically. You need to understand, for example, that hallucinations can happen, and you need to understand how you prevent hallucinations from making its way into your work. You need to realize that AI is ultimately an assistant to you, but you still bear the professional responsibility of approving and supporting the work that the AI is generating. The AI is not a substitute for a lawyer. It's not a substitute for the discernment and judgment that a lawyer has. So I think we're still really working through some of the basics in terms of how do we best leverage AI in legal, and how do we use AI ethically and responsibly. And it's a profoundly different and more powerful technology than the cloud, in that AI can actually do the legal work and help execute on legal work. And this is what we've just released with a new set of tools at Clio through Clio Work and through our acquisition of VLEX, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in a few moments. But this opportunity to really execute on legal work. And the difference we talk about at Clio is that in the old world of SaaS, if you think about what we delivered in Clio over the last 17 years, it's really a system of record. It's a system of record that enables you to track what's going on in your law firm and to track the work that's happening, the time you've invested in clients, help you bill your clients and get paid, and so on and so forth. But the very profound evolution we've gone through over the course of the last year is becoming a system of action and weaving AI through every aspect of what we do at Clio and enabling a system of action that actually does work on your behalf, which is a really profound, important, and exciting evolution of what technology can do for law firms.
I have a bunch of follow-up questions. We'll get to the system of record, system of action thing. Now, given that you went through or you went through the transition with the cloud, you're now going through the transition with AI. You mentioned some similarities and some differences. One difference seems to be just the rate of adoption. Are there any lessons that you learned from back in the cloud days that you were able to apply in this change that gave you some sort of unfair advantage of all the founders who never went through that period? Or is it so new that nothing really applied?
No, actually, it's a great question. And I do think a bunch of lessons from the cloud era apply to the AI era. I think as technologists, we tend to get really wrapped up in the technology itself and excited about what the technology does and how it works, and often think that if you develop a great technology, it will kind of sell itself. And the reality is, what I realized, early on in the days of launching Clio, is having really cool technology is less than half the battle. There's a really significant portion of making a product successful that is about educating the market about this technology, especially in the legal sphere, where there's a lot of regulatory constraints and a lot of concerns around the security and ethics of leveraging new technologies. There's a lot of education you need to do on that front. So what we realized early on in the journey with the cloud era was, again, having this cool technology is an important foundation, but really activating this in the marketplace and getting the marketplace to adopt this technology requires a lot of education and a lot of investment in helping paint a really complete picture of how the modern law firm can embrace this technology to make them better, to make them more efficient, to deliver better experiences to their clients. And what we started doing early on in the journey with Clio is writing a bunch of white papers. I started speaking at every conference I could get invited to. In those early days, again, a huge part of our investment in educating the legal community was around educating them about the security and ethics of cloud computing and what that means for lawyers and how they can best leverage this technology ethically and responsibly in their law firm. We launched what has become one of the most widely attended legal conferences in the world, ClioCon, 14 years ago, again with a view to how can we make this, how can we inspire a whole generation of lawyers about what the future might be, and realizing like part of what you're doing with technology and part of what you're doing with a product like Clio is you're not just shipping technology, but you're actually creating a movement. You're creating a movement about a new and better way of running your law firm, and you want a really strong educational apparatus wrapped around that technology to help teach people, like, number one, inspire them about what the future might be for them, and then really educate them and help connect the dots on how to get there. And so that was a big part of our recipe for success in the cloud era, was becoming thought leaders on what does the cloud mean for the legal community. We really helped usher in the age of the cloud to legal thanks to those efforts. And again, the technology was already there. We didn't invent the technology, but we figured out how to best deploy that technology and get it adopted within the legal community. And Cut to 17 years later and the era of AI, and it's exactly the same picture, where we've got these incredible technologies, we've got these incredible foundational models that can unlock a huge amount of productivity in a law firm. But again, practically, how do we bring the community along in figuring out how do we adopt these technologies within within a law firm? How do we do it in a way that is secure? How do we do it in a way that is ethical and that truly unlocks the capabilities of AI without potentially falling prey to some of the risks of embracing AI? So there are a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of one of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain, and that is, history does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And I think what we're seeing with the AI era versus the cloud era is that it certainly rhymes. And to your earlier comment, the other observation I would share is just how accelerated the adoption cycle is. What we saw take a decade with cloud in terms of adoption is happening in a year in AI terms. And that's without any sense of hyperbole. That's literally what our data shows in terms of looking at the adoption curve of cloud versus AI. So the pace of change has been increased by at least an order of magnitude, and the level of impact of these technologies has likewise increased by at least an order of magnitude.
I have one more follow-up question on the kind of communicating what's possible. One question before that, I'm not sure if that's related to it, but it feels like over the last 2 to 3, 4 months, maybe, you've been a lot more active on LinkedIn. Has that to do with kind of the need of education and bringing people along and telling like the world what's possible and all of those things?
Yeah, I think frankly, it's just a function of feeling like I've got a lot to say in terms of, you know, my vision for what the future of legal looks like, intertwined with AI and leveraging all of those capabilities. You know, we presented a really exciting vision of what that future looks like at ClioCon in my keynote back in October of 2025. The response to that keynote and the response to that vision was incredibly positive, and I've seen a lot of inbound demand to basically, like, I want to hear more about this. Like the community, the legal community writ large, wants to hear more about that vision and hear me elaborate on that. So that I've been trying to do that through LinkedIn and some other channels to get my point of view out, and to also get some real-time reactions to test my thinking with the community and get reactions on how we're thinking about things at Clio.
Love it. Now, I'm curious about your thoughts regarding how to communicate, let's say, hype versus reality. Like, obviously, there's a lot of new startups out there, a lot of legal tech startups, AI native startups, who maybe tend to oversell a little bit and overhype. You, obviously, you're an established company. You have tons of customers. You are probably not able to hype as much just because you have a lot of, let's say, responsibilities compared to a new AI startup that has nothing to lose. What, in your opinion, is the right way to paint what's possible without hyping, without overselling it? What's your middle ground?
Yeah, well, I have a pretty clear point of view on this. I'm a big fan of, you know, how Steve Jobs ran product at Apple, which was basically never talk about future products that aren't shipping and talk about what is shipping today. Steve Jobs would do an announcement of a new product, a new operating system, and it was shipping imminently, or sometimes that very same day. And I really think that's the right way to do things. And that's exactly what we did at ClioCon. And what was really exciting for me in that keynote speech was to lay out a vision, and to lay out a vision of what the future of a lawyer's day looks like with the AI technologies that Clio is building. And we walked through this really exciting day in the life of walkthrough, showing how AI starts to automate huge parts of a lawyer's day. And the punchline at the end of that keynote was, everything I just walked through is shipping today. And the crowd erupted in applause because, again, I think everyone has been, to your point, maybe they've become a bit cynical, and they're like, okay, here's a great another future casting keynote from a CEO. And I think what was really compelling and exciting and engaging about the way we tend to do things at Clio is we're not talking about some future. We're not talking about some overhyped technology that's going to ship in 2 or 3 years. We're talking about technology that we can put in your hands today, and this is going to radically transform how you run your practice. So that's how we approach things. It's really, let's talk about what is shipping today. What we've heard very consistently from customers, again, trying to bridge this gap, I think, that exists with AI right now, is everyone hears the hype and they want to know, how do I practically go back to my law office, sit down at my computer, and leverage AI in a way that benefits me today? And one of the big themes for us in terms of how we've been executing on this education strategy is really trying to paint that picture. How do we bridge the gap between hype and reality? And how do we practically explain what is possible today? And what's incredible is when you look at what we're shipping today in the form of Clio Work and our other AI products, we launched a whole set of AI teammates, we call them, that are embedded in other parts of our SaaS application that basically, again, go and do work on your behalf. We can, in a very practical and direct and concrete way, say, sit down at your computer, light up Clio Work, light up your Clio Grow AI assistant, light up your Clio Manage AI assistant, and all sorts of your day and all sorts of your actual legal work is going to start getting automated. And we're going to make you better and faster at the same time, thanks to these AI technologies. So it's a pretty incredible to be able to paint that picture, and not just of what the future looks like. And again, that's what's so exciting about AI today. You can talk about what it can practically do today in a way that would have sounded like science fiction 2 years ago, but this is actually available today. It's a very exciting time to be building technology in legal.
I'm curious, what was the moment that you personally, Jack Newton, realized, oh shit, pardon my English, this is going to change everything. This is going to change everything about the legal profession and about Clio and how we need to build our product and run our company?
So I would say that was, in the winter of 2022, right after ChatGPT got released in November of that year. I sent a Slack message to my CTO shortly after ChatGPT was released and said, this is changing everything, and we need to be thinking about our product in a profoundly different way. And I would say the way my thinking has evolved and progressed over the course of those 3 years and change now is really the foundational insight that drove our conviction around the acquisition of VLEX last year, where we saw how AI would really drive a convergence of the practice of law and the business of law. Another very influential piece for me in this journey was a blog post that Sarah Tavel at Benchmark wrote, talking about the title of the blog post was "Sell Work, Not Software." And what Sarah talked about in that piece, and I'd encourage everyone listening to read it. It's I think one of the most insightful pieces of work that a SaaS founder can read. But she talked about how the real value of AI is not doing what SaaS has typically done, which is help people manage their work and orchestrate their work, but it's actually in doing the work. And the value you can unlock in doing that is obviously really tremendous, both in terms of the value you can unlock for your customers, but also the value you can unlock in the total addressable market that you're chasing after. And just to give you a sense of what that looks like for Clio, in the SaaS and payments era, we had what you might call like a 20 or $25 billion TAM in the software and services opportunity in legal, which is, by the way, a huge TAM that you can build a really big, important, enduring company in. But when you look at what we're doing in the AI era, where we're actually helping execute legal work itself, we're expanding that TAM from a $20 billion TAM to the $1 trillion a year that is spent on legal services globally. And so, Clio and many other SaaS startups have an opportunity to increase their TAM by an order of magnitude or more by really taking this point of view that Sarah talks about, which is how do you sell work, not software.
Is it fair to say that this is the busiest time for you in a while?
The last year has definitely been the busiest year in my 17 years at Clio. Things seem to just keep getting more intense and faster paced.
How has your day-to-day personally as the CEO of this organization changed? Is it still meetings or I'm curious both in how your day is structured and then also how you operate the company, what KPIs you care about. Has that fundamentally changed from, let's say, compared to 2021?
There's certainly a core set of KPIs we're measuring, and that stayed very consistent. Even over the course of the last decade plus. You want to be looking at your entire customer acquisition funnel. How are we doing all the way from NQLs to our opportunities? What's the conversion rate of opportunities to paid? What does our retention rate look like? What's our net retention, gross retention, and so on? So, a lot of those same metrics apply today as much as they did 10 or 15 years ago. But in the age of AI, we're really spending a lot of time and energy looking at how are customers actually using the product? How are they engaging from a DAU, MAU perspective? How much time are they spending in Clio work? Are they generating the kinds of answers and generating the kind of outcomes that they're hoping to? What we've been very encouraged to see is Clio work has become, in basically the 2 months it's been released, our most successful product launch by a very significant margin relative to all the other products we've launched in the last decade. So it's very exciting to see the adoption cycle for AI. But really, when you think about selling work, not software, some of the metrics in the KPIs that you're measuring really want to start reflecting that. How can you quantify how much time you're saving your customers? How much are you seeing them get to the right answer they want from the AI in the first shot? Can we start to quantify with some of our AI teammates how much business they're generating for our customers? With the Grow intake assistant, for example, the AI teammate in our CRM product, which is called Grow, this is actually helping convert leads all the way through from an initial ad that it's helping you place on a marketing site all the way to a new paid client. So we can actually tell a really straight line story about here's the revenue that AI is helping your firm generate in terms of bringing in new clients. So this framing of how you think about what your software is delivering and the KPIs you measure as a result really need to evolve and transform as you think about moving from a system of record to a system of action, because you're really trying to quantify in the system of action what is the economic value of the actions that you're taking on behalf of your customers. Whereas before you tracked things like DAUs and MAUs to basically say like, hey, am I useful enough as a tool that my customers are coming back and using me every week, every day, every hour? What does that engagement cycle look like? And that still matters a lot. But in the age of AI, what is counterintuitive is you might actually see your MAUs and your weekly active users and your daily active users drop to an extent because you're helping automate so much work, and you are helping them put their law firm on autopilot to an extent. And they're going to be able to divert more of their time and attention to actually having strategic conversations with their clients, moving up the value chain with their clients, and so on. And they're spending less time in the toil that is a term we talk about a lot at Clio, is how can we take the toil out of running a law firm. And if we're doing that, actually, reducing engagement to an extent, at least as measured through clicks and DAUs and MAUs, might actually be a desired outcome.
Yeah, it might actually be the ideal outcome for someone to only open your app once a month, because all the agents are doing all the things automatically, and just once a month you maybe check on them. And
exactly, you're a manager coming in and checking in on essentially your employees, and you're helping orchestrate them. You're helping, there's in legal always going to be a very tight human in the loop cycle. And yeah, you're absolutely right. You're coming in and you're kind of parachuting in and approving work.
Now, this change from moving a system of record to a system of action, you expanded on what that means. And I mean, that ties directly into sell the work, not the software. Do you believe this is specific to Clio, specific to legal tech, or is this something you believe all or most SaaS founders should be thinking about, how they can move their product from a system of record to a system of action?
Oh no, I think this is something that every, especially vertical SaaS founder, can and should be thinking about. And I'll make a plug for Dave Wan and his vertical SaaS knowledge project. And Dave and his team at Tidemark have done a tremendous amount of excellent writing on vertical SaaS and how to really realize the full potential of vertical SaaS. And of course, that's evolved really substantially in the age of AI. And what Dave talks about very heavily is how do we, as vertical SaaS applications, think about this evolution from a system of record to a system of action. And I think what's really exciting for the vertical SaaS founders that might be listening to us is that the value that vertical SaaS founders can unlock, I think, is dramatically more than what horizontal SaaS applications will be able to unlock for their customers. I think in the same way that vertical SaaS could get more and more tailored to the needs of a specific industry or a specific vertical in a system of record, the opportunity to really understand the work that to really deeply understand the work that your customers are executing against and how you can automate that work with AI, I think is dramatically amplified in a vertical context. And almost the more niche you get in a vertical, the more value you can unlock by getting even more customized in the solutions you can deliver. And just to give you an example of what that looks like in legal, even in legal, you may think about legal as one vertical, but it still has a massive number of sub verticals. And when you see this almost Cambrian explosion of startups in legal, a lot of that is around specific practice areas in legal, seeing AI tools developed specifically for them. And if you're an IP lawyer doing IP litigation, there's AI startups doing really exciting and super high value tools just for IP lawyers. Similarly, if you're a personal injury lawyer, there's an ecosystem of vertical SaaS AI applications being developed just for personal injury lawyers that do everything from help you with the intake process to actually generating demand letters for you, stuff work that would have taken days or sometimes weeks for a lawyer to do is being done in minutes by these AI applications, and the value to the law firm is tens of thousands of dollars, not $20 or $30 a month for a SaaS subscription. So I do think a very interesting and exciting evolution is the more verticalized you get in this AI era, the deeper the value you can unlock for your customers, and the more profound the insights you can have on your customers will be.
Now, this will tie into your recent acquisitions of VLAX and ShareDo, but I'm curious, based on what you just said, Clio obviously covers a lot of different practice areas and also a lot of different law firm sizes. Where do you see your role in this? Are you going to be swallowing up all those very niche vertical ones and wrapping them into the Clio product, or how do you see yourself in this competitive landscape, if you're willing to comment on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. For one, I'll tackle the first question first, which is in terms of the size of law firms we're looking to address. One of the other big announcements we made at ClioCon last year was Clio for Enterprise,
Yep.
which is our effort and our basically our division focused on expanding into the enterprise and really building out this new class of software for enterprise law firms that helps connect Vincent, which is our AI platform for enterprise, with Clio Operate, which is our system of record and now system of action for the enterprise. And we really think there's a 1 + 1 = 10 opportunity in connecting Clio Operate and Vincent, in that you can start to orchestrate not just the human beings doing your legal work, but you can start to orchestrate AI agents that can help execute that legal work as well. So enterprise is a really big focus for us in 2026, and we're seeing a lot of early success there that we're excited by. And what is truly a cool moment for me is to be able to say we can definitively service law firms all the way from the solo, which is where we started in 2008, to 3,000 plus person global law firms, and everything in between. And that's a really exciting place to be, and really has helped turn Clio into one of the only technology companies in the world that can service that range of law firm needs. The second question you had, I think, is a great one and fits in really well with the strategy we've been executing on for almost 15 years now in terms of how we develop our application ecosystem. The point of view we've always had at Clio is we're never going to be able to solve every problem in legal, but we want to be the hub of data and the hub of that ecosystem, and have dozens or hundreds of applications that are built on top of that foundation that can tie into that central hub of data around the law firm, and really be effectively the operating system for a law firm with a number of applications that can plug in and tie into that operating system. And over the course of the last almost 15 years, we've built an application ecosystem of over 300 integration partners. And that applies just as well in the AI era, where some of those vertical specific AI tools I talked about plug directly into Clio and are able to extend Clio's capabilities in a really powerful way. And the value add for those startups is they don't need to go and reinvent the wheel of what Clio does. They can really focus on what makes them uniquely excellent at their value proposition. So now let's talk a bit more about how that might play out in the long term.
Yeah.
We see an opportunity to potentially acquire some of those companies. We've already acquired VLEX and incorporated that into our stack, and have unlocked a whole set of new AI capabilities. And we'll be acquiring more AI companies in the future as well, I'm sure. Because what we see through our app ecosystem is a way of almost getting some experimentation and visibility on what our customers actually want and what really unlocks value for them. We've made 6 acquisitions to date, and 5 of those 6 acquisitions have been of companies that integrated into the Clio platform before we acquired them. So it's a great proving ground for companies, both to demonstrate value to our customers, for us to see the value of the integration thesis without having to guess. We can actually see how customers are using an integrated product. And then, of course, unlocking the value of that integration, if we do an acquisition, is a lot more straightforward if they're already integrated.
Right. Is the move to go up market with Clio Enterprise, has that to do with what you see with AI, or is that almost uncorrelated with that?
I would say that's maybe not uncorrelated, but what we see ultimately is a really exciting TAM expansion opportunity. We see a segment of the market with the same kind of challenges that I saw in the solo small firm segment 17 years ago. I see a bunch of antiquated technology, a bunch of on-premise technology. When I talk to enterprise law firms, when I talk to enterprise in-house counsel teams, they're deeply frustrated with the lack of progress in the software stack that they're using and how antiquated it is. And again, a lot of it is still on-premise technology or kind of pseudo cloud technology that's hosted on a Windows terminal server somewhere. And I think the forcing function now is that if you're trying to embrace AI, you need to be embracing the cloud and have your data in the cloud as a starting point. So if you I think about it almost as a flavor of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the food, water, and shelter is the foundation, and in the technology context, that's your cloud infrastructure, and that's getting your data into the cloud. The apex you want to achieve is an AI-enabled law firm where you've got unfettered access to all of your documents, all of your data. Your AI can leverage the collective knowledge that your firm has generated over the last number of years, in some cases, the last number of decades. And in order to realize that value, you need to embrace the cloud before you can unlock that AI opportunity. And I think what enterprise law firms are seeing, and what has become untenable to them, is they cannot achieve their AI ambitions without transforming the technology that they've maybe been using for 20 or 30 years that has just outlived its utility and is blocking them from leveraging the opportunity of the cloud. So that is the really unique and exciting opportunity we see in enterprise, where we feel like the kind of transformation we drove for small to medium-sized law firms over the last 15 years is an opportunity for us to drive. We can drive exactly that same kind of transformation in the enterprise now.
Maybe to zoom out a bit, I think it's fair to say to call you a SaaS veteran. I don't know how much.
I've got some gray hairs in my beard now. I'll take that.
I don't know how much advising or mentoring you do for first-time founders or new founders, but when you talk to new first-time AI SaaS founders, what advice do you find yourself most often giving or nudging them into?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I do try to pay it forward. I advise a number of startups. I sit on the board of a couple of startups and do a bunch of talks at startup events and so on. And I think the advice I give to founders has actually stayed pretty consistent over the years, and even though the underlying technologies change, even though we're talking about AI rather than the cloud today, I think there's a couple of pieces of advice I always share. One is actually not about technology or building product at all, but just in terms of managing your own psychology. Building a startup is really hard, and you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. And I talk about Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, a lot. It's one I recommend any founder reading. And what Ben talks about is the highs you can have in building a startup are the most euphoric highs you can imagine. And then sometimes the next day, or even in the same day, you can be facing a devastating low. So thinking about how you just have to have tremendous amount of resilience. And I think what's tough about listening to podcasts like this and hearing about Clio's story is I'm talking about all the highlights and the success. There's been a lot of dark periods, and there's been periods where I was worried we wouldn't be able to make payroll, and we had an extremely hard time fundraising for the first 5 years of our existence. We launched the company in the depths of the global financial crisis. We couldn't get an investor to write a check for over 18 months after pitching over 100 investors. So, there's a lot of hard parts that are kind of underemphasized when hear all the success bias in the books and podcasts and conference talks you hear about startups, and just realizing that being able to persevere and being able to be what I describe I describe myself as a pathological optimist, and always seeing the bright side. I think is one of the reasons that having a co-founder is often very important, and why you see some funds like Y Combinator even insist on a co-founder is you kind of need somebody to lean on when you're going through those very dark periods. And hopefully when you're in the depths of one of those dark periods, you can have somebody that's a counterbalance that's not at the same low. So I think managing your own psychology is a hugely important part of the equation. Hard Thing About Hard Things is a great book that I'd recommend on that topic. The second component is, just really being obsessed with your early customers. And you don't need to think about how do I get to 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 customers in right out of the gate. I'm really a firm believer that if you find a product that speaks to and is really, really valuable to first one customer, you're going to be able to find 10 customers, and you're going to be able to find 100, and then eventually thousands of customers if you're playing in any kind of meaningful market vertical. Even though it's a bit of an oldie book, I would call it an oldie but goodie, but I'm a huge fan of Stephen Blank's 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And Stephen was a mentor to Eric Ries, who wrote The Lean Startup. And in some ways, I think the 4 Steps to the Epiphany is a lesser known, but I think maybe a more profound book in some ways, just in terms of talking about the customer development life cycle and how to do that customer development exercise. And I really think if you are customer obsessed and you can build a product that is not just kind of a neat or useful tool for a customer, but one that they would really miss if you took it away from them, is the key to building true value and in building a really valuable startup. So being, if you can manage your own psychology and you can be customer obsessed, I think the path to success is not guaranteed, but it's going to really increase your odds of getting to that successful outcome.
Now, to wrap this up, and maybe this ties into your first point on managing your psychology, I think I read that you run every day. Is that still true?
Yeah, that's still true. So that's maybe another pathology I've got. But I've run every day without missing a day now for something like 27 years.
Not a day, like...
Not a day, like every day. I when I was about 20 years old, I started a streak, and I just said I want to see how long I can keep a streak.
You know the number? How much the streak now is? What is that? 7,000 or something?
How many days?
Yeah.
Yeah. In that order. Yeah.
What do you do when you're sick?
I run. So here are the rules. Yes. Even if I'm sick. And I'm lucky I don't get sick very often, maybe because I run every day. I need to run a minimum of 2 kilometers. So it's not a huge run, but I need to get out there for a couple of K. And ideally I'm getting out, for 4, 5, 6K. I'll run the occasional half marathon as well. Wow. There's a big annual run in Vancouver I do every year, the Sun Run, which is a 10K that me and 50,000 other people do. So it's but what I find about running, and I tend to do it first thing in the morning because that's kind of the only time of my day I feel like I'm guaranteed not to get disrupted. It's almost meditative time. It's a time for me to reflect on the day prior. It's a time for me to think about the day ahead and what I want to get done and what my priorities are. There's no screen time. There's no, there's nobody talking in your ear. There's no family. Like it's just, it's the half hour or 45 minutes a day that I get totally to myself. And I just treasure it now. So, and thankfully I have not, I'll knock wood, not been sick enough or injured enough that I can't get that minimum run in.
Wow. 7,000 plus day streak. Jack, this was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. All of the things you mentioned, the hard things about how things sell the work, not the software, all of those things we'll put in the show notes. If people want to check you out or Clio, all of that will be in the show notes too. Jack, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Finn.
All right, this podcast is brought to you by Project 33. Project 33 is the leading executive thought leadership agency for LinkedIn. If you're looking to activate your founder, your CEO, your executives, or any of your internal subject matter experts and create thought leadership content for them to build trust and credibility for your brand, reach out at project33.io.